Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And we just keep on rolling here, man. Football season's right around the corner. We got the
This
Big
week.
12
It's like
preview. Dude,
this
I know it's
weekend.
nuts. Week 0, like, I can't even believe it. Like, normally Labor Day we're looking at and we're like, oh, sweet. But no, not this year, Tyson. We got it started early. But I have Florida State plays and some other games. We'll have some stuff for that, but we got to keep going with these previews because we're a little behind schedule, I think.
I mean, we're on schedule for the schedule that we made, but that doesn't mean the schedule we made was well done.
That's a good point. So if you're just tuning into this preview, what we do is we're going to go through each team, just talk about them from a certain football standpoint, just what we think about them coming in. And at the end, we have Money Making Time. We're going to go through and give out our win total, best bets, as well as the conference champion. What we do here, we start kind of doing an overview. Interesting year in the Big 12. I mean, we got a lot of new teams. It's a 16-team conference. It feels like there's a lot of teams in the middle of the pack. Couple doormats, couple people at the top who can maybe contend for the CFP. What do you think of the Big 12 on paper?
I think the Big 12 looks an awful lot like how the Big 12 has always looked. Some bullies left the block, obviously, right? Like we know that the big dogs, Texas, Oklahoma, are now in the SEC, and then they get a different kind of bully kind of showing up here in Utah, and we'll see how they do year one. Geographically, this one's tough. It's tougher maybe than the ACC for me because at least most of those schools were like right next to each other. This one, I'm like, man, that's a lot of travel.
And it just like you just can't necessarily picture a lot of these teams being in the Big 12. Like you have teams from the Pac-12 who have jumped into here, and it's UCF. certainly interesting. And UCF, yeah, over in Florida, Houston. I know they were last year, and you got West Virginia just thrown in there from the East Coast. So a lot of stuff to break down. But I'm with you on the Big 12. This is like a big picture thought. I mean, I think depending on what happens with Florida State and Clemson going forward. I mean, it feels like this, I guess, is a de facto number 3. But man, Tyson, I don't know. I'm curious to see how like the recruiting trail goes and NIL and transfer portal, things like that build with these new teams.
We'll see. I think that the Big 12, like the strength of this conference is weird. Like it's always kind of been we were talking pre-show. They just always have like 6 teams that win 7 games. And so then it becomes hard because the highs aren't going to be as high as Florida State or Clemson, but are they better than the ACC? Like they're not better than the Big 10 or the SEC. We know that. Also, ladies and gentlemen, fun fact, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all whether they're the 4th best conference or the 3rd. It's just it's fun for us.
Oh, absolutely. So let's get into it. We're going alphabetical. We'll start here with the Arizona Wildcats, one of the newer teams that are jumping in here. Last season actually had an incredible year under Jed Fish that propelled him to leave for the Washington job. They went 10-3, won the Alamo Bowl against Oklahoma. Brent Brennan comes in as the head coach from San Jose State. I mean, he's been a really good head coach for the Spartans. And now he's going to come in and take a leap into the Power 4. The good news is they were able to retain a lot of their stars who are in the transfer portal. Quarterback Noah Fafita coming back. Tedero McMillan, their all-world wide receiver, going to be a first-round draft pick back. And they get a lot of returners here, 8 returning starters, 7 on defense, 84th in returning production. You kind of want that to be higher, but, that's expected, right? But 89 offensive line starts. I know they got a couple injuries here, and so that's going to tick down. But what do you think about Arizona under Brennan? I know he's a guy that we targeted in the group of 5 level a lot.
Well, I think it's, first of all name team. Like amongst the stars, they have some of the most fun names in all of college football. But it's the Big 12 again. Like it's going to come down to defense. Welcome to the Big 12, Arizona. We know you're going to put up 1 billion points. The entire defensive line is gone. Is that addition by subtraction based on where they were a year ago? I guess time will tell. Trey Smith comes in from San Jose State. That's a good player. But like it's Dino Babers, right? Running as DC here. So let's see if he can bring some of this East Coast grit, some of this New York toughness down here to Arizona. Because on offense, is there a better pass catching or like a quarterback wide receiver combo in all of college football right now?
Maybe look at Ole Miss. I mean, anytime
I
you have
suppose
Ohio State, but it's. I mean,
we got to see him
T-Mac
throw the
and
ball.
Fafita. Sure, that's a good point. But I mean, T-Mac and Fafita, man. I mean, they're best friends. They got a bond, and McMillan could have left, man. He could have gone to pretty much anywhere in the country he wanted to go, and he decided to come back. I think that's huge.
What do you? So, as like a quick aside, right now you're running an NFL team. Both these guys come out in the draft. Are you taking Ted McMillan or are you taking Luther Burden, first wide receiver off the board?
I'd go Burden. I think he's just a better athlete, but like on paper. But I mean, McMillan, dude, he's like Larry Fitzgerald, but he just doesn't drop the
Freaky.
football. I think he's dropped 5 passes in his college career. He's 6'4", 215. I mean, Jed Fish. I was reading the freaks list from Bruce Feldman that he put out, and Jed Fish, he's been in the NFL for a while, coaching, and he said McMillan's the best athlete he's been around when you just encompass hand-eye coordination, how he moves, things like that. I'm like, man, that is high praise. But Burden's a freak. I think we're going to see it this year.
Yes.
Let's move on to Arizona State. Now, this is interesting for me. Kenny Dillingham was a bright offensive coordinator mind at Oregon, decided to take this job here. The quarterback situation hasn't really been figured out, right? Sam Leavitt coming in from Michigan State. You got some other guys, Jeff Sims backing up and maybe can win the job, but we saw what he did at Nebraska, just nothing to write home about. 3-9 last year, 2-7 in conference, and that's in the Pac-12. I think the Big 12 is better than the Pac-12 was last year, and that includes the high-end teams like Oregon and Washington, and we know USC has talent, but I think this is going to be a tough transition for him. 68th in returning production, only 54.1% of their offensive yards are back. Tackles back is 55.7%. But here's what I go back to. If you're going to give a guy like Dillingham time, or at least the offensive line is going to give him time for the quarterback to do something in his offense, that's a positive. They have 131 offensive snaps coming back or offensive starts coming back on the offensive line. It's 11th in the country. My only hesitation here, 19th toughest schedule. I'm concerned about that, especially in year 2 in the first year under Dillingham in the first year in the Big 12.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about it a little bit pre-show there as well. Like, it's a experienced offensive line group, but not experienced with each other. Like, these dudes haven't really played at all with each other, so that's going to be interesting. One thing I think that's kind of important to mention with Arizona State is they did finish 3-9 a year ago. They were a couple plays away from a 5-win season and upsetting some really big names. That's really neither here nor there, but just a couple plays go their way and we might be having a different discussion. I'm excited to watch Scatterbo. Like, the dude's a baller and he's back, and so that's going to be fun. They might have hit the portal the hardest out of any of these teams in the Big 12 as far as like filling the defense. We got to see how the pieces fit together. As currently constructed, I don't think that Arizona finishes much better than, or Arizona State, excuse me, like 11th or 12th in the conference. Like, somewhere around there, I think is where you can kind of pencil them in. It's going to be fun to watch at times, and it's going to be like watching paint dry at times too.
Let's get into Baylor. This is a huge year for Dave Aranda. This is his 5th season. He's 23-25. Like, it's been disappointing since they were in the Big 12 championship game. They went 3-9 last year, 2-7 in conference, and that had regression written all over it. Like, I was pounding the table hard that Baylor was going to take a step back, and they did in a big way. This is where I think you can see Baylor rebound a bit. Dave Aranda is going to call plays now on the defensive end. I think that's huge when 79.3% of their tackles are back, 12th in the country. They're 25th in returning production overall. Plus, they get Daquan Finn in that quarterback. That is huge. I mean, he was a stud at Toledo. 22 touchdowns, 9 picks. Now, we talked about this in our ACC preview. Going from the MAC to this level is a step up. Is he going to be able to do the same things that he did against MAC teams that he is against Big 12 competition? That's to be seen. But he's an experienced guy, 10 starters returning on offense, 9 on defense, enticing the 42nd toughest schedule. This is a winnable season for sure for Dave Aranda.
Yeah, it's going to all come down to the offense. Like, this is what they scored 21 points a game, something like that a year ago. Like, they didn't put the ball in the end zone. They had like 15 total passing touchdowns. That stuff has to change. We think Finn will be a boost over any other option that they have or kind of have had. But since that title game appearance, it's been, you said downhill, but like the defense is still going to be fine. Like Dave Aranda is going to be fine. There have been some massive rough spots over the last couple of years, but this is the only team in the conference, I think, where you look at it and you go, offense is an issue. And I don't know if Baylor did enough this season. Like, what does Dave Aranda have to do to keep his job?
Oh man, I mean,
7.
They got to go to a bowl game for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, let's start there. Win 3 more games than you did last year and play in a bowl.
Yeah,
I think that's a good start. But I mean, is Baylor are they that? I don't want to say impatient, but are they that willing to fire a head coach who they're aggressively spending an NIL? Like they clearly want to do something here. Do they want to just restart? I don't know.
He's been there longer, I think, than maybe we're thinking in our heads too. Like maybe they're just over the Dave Aranda experience.
Maybe. Let's go to BYU. This continues to be an interesting marriage here, for a funny kind of term here. BYU married to the Big 12 Conference. We're independent for a while. It's still Kalani Sitake as head coach. 9th season, 61-41. Their first year did not go well. 4-8 overall, 1-7 in conference. That doesn't pose too much confidence going forward that they can get it done. Here's what scares me too. Their quarterback coming in here is Gary Bohannon. This is like his 6th or 7th year of college football. I mean, he went to USF last year, threw 1,000 yards, shoulder surgery, done after 7 games. How does he look coming to BYU? Another new offense. The positive here for BYU is they got a lot of returners, right? 31st in returning production, 63.6% of their offensive yards are back, 68.5% of their tackles are back. They are 55th in the country in offensive line starts. Like we know BYU is going to be mature. They're going to have multi-year starters. Like that's just the reality here.
Life experience, people.
Life experience too. I just don't know if they have the athlete to compete in the Big 12. Now, I think it helps with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, but I'd like to be proved wrong here, but I think it's going to get tougher and tougher. I mean, we just talked about Baylor. There's other teams in this conference who are obsessed with football and are willing to spend NIL money to do it. That's just something BYU can't really do.
No, and they don't score any points either. They let everybody score on them. You run for 200 yards a game last year when you played BYU, and they started hot too. Like that's something to keep in mind when you talk about the overall record. Like what were they, 4-1 or something like that to start the season?
Playing their independent schedule.
Yes, and then just boom, wear and tear of the real deal kind of gets to you. Brad, you mentioned maybe not having the level of athlete necessary. 2 guys that I know well or know of, Jack Kelly, Marquis Collins, both come over from Weber State, and they're probably going to play right away on the defensive side of the football. Most of the time, the FCS transfers up to the FBS on the defensive side of the ball. They were playing at the FCS level for a reason, whether it is foot speed, lateral athleticism, something like that. It's just like if it's Jack Kelly versus KJ Jefferson on the edge on a read option or something like that, I think I know who I'm taking.
Let's go to Cincinnati, and this is another team who didn't have a great debut season. 3-9, 1-8 in conference. This is now the 2nd season under Scott Satterfield, right? He wants to rebuild this thing. Listen, when Luke Fickell left, this was bare bones. I mean, God, everybody departed with him. I mean, I couldn't even believe, 3-9 last year, all things considering for Cincy is actually pretty impressive. But what does it look like in year 2? I think it's going to be something similar. 112th in returning production, 101st in offensive yards back at 34.6%. 38.6% of their tackles are back, Tyson. And then even the 79 offensive line starts. Ooh, Brendan Sorby's your quarterback, transferred to Indiana for a reason. I think we are looking at this thing. This has got to be a long-term thing for Satterfield here. So if you're believing in Cincy, I think you're a year too early. That's just my early read on this.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think some things to look for this season, like you return the entire offensive line, and yeah, they're a little bit inexperienced, but let's just set the tone, set the culture. I don't really know what Jeff Satterfield football is at the big time level yet is right now. I mean, we saw him win 8 games at Louisville, and that was awesome. And then we saw him be really bad at Louisville, and then we saw obviously last year their biggest win was over Pitt. Remember when that was a big upset when that happened early in the season, and this unfolded how it did. It's going to be tough. Like you said, it's bare bones. There's just not a ton of talent here, and yes, like Evan Pryor comes in from Ohio State and you get Sorsby from Indiana, and those are big time players. I think we've seen enough of Sorsby to know that maybe he fits more at a Cincinnati than he does even at an Indiana.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what he does going forward here. I mean, it's another school that likes to spend or wants to spend and build for long-term success. So, how it goes this year, I think will be predicated on, or how it goes in the future will be predicated on what they do in the short term. But let's get to Colorado. And this is a hot team. It's going to be a hot team. As long as Deion Sanders is in charge, this is a team that's going to be in the headlines. Last year, we know they took the college football world by storm early. I mean, I saw something online. It was funny. He's like, remember, we were all Colorado bandwagon fans for like 4 weeks. I was like, yeah, that was kind of crazy because they were the talk of the world for a while, or at least the United States, the college football scene. I mean, they're drawing more views than some NFL stuff. I mean, it was crazy. But then they peter out, and this is in the Pac-12, 4-8 to finish, 1-6 in conference. Man, Shedeur Sanders, he's getting some buzz to be the number 1 overall pick. There's some things there, certainly with some talent. 3,200 yards, 69% completions, 27 touchdowns, 3 picks. I mean, the kid can play. Number 1 overall pick good? Is that just hype? I don't know. The offensive line has got to protect him. And he was scrambling and running around. I think if that's the case, we can see better offense. They get 100 offensive line starts coming in this year. That's huge. But they're 48th in returning production. They play a tough schedule. They got, and I don't know about their depth, but man, they got some stars on this team. They've been a good job building through the transfer portal.
Well, it's funny. Like on the one hand, yes, they're really good at building through the transfer portal, but the other part is like we came into last year going, I don't know about this defense, and I don't know about this offensive line, and we're coming into this season going, I don't know about the defense, and I don't know about the offensive line. The toys are shiny, they're nice, right? Like it's the nicest car on the block, all of that stuff. Dude, it's gonna be hard for this team to win games. The level of microscope that they're under compared to your average 6 wins, like the line on this team is set at 5.5 wins. They're under a microscope as if they're Georgia, and I think that's going to be tough. My early prediction is that Colorado implodes sometime around week 9,
and that would be later in the campaign than they did last year.
It's true.
So, I mean, if you're giving them that, it's a build. Now, let me ask you this. When Sanders leaves, Shedeur Sanders, I should say, does Deion follow him? Does he stay at Colorado? Like, what's your read on that?
What do you think?
I think he stays for 1 year. A little bit. You're a little delayed here. But I think he stays for 1 year. And then there will be some opportunities that open up that I can see him jump to. Like, let's just say this. Maybe Lincoln Riley goes to the NFL. Deion Sanders in LA. That would be insane.
Quit it. No shot. Deion Sanders is out of there the second that Shedeur is gone. Right? That's what I think. And if USC, please hire this guy. Like, please do it. Let him into the actual big show. That would be a disaster class, Brett.
Let's get to Houston because your boy Willie Fritz has now taken over this program, and that's because Dana Holgorsen. Man, if we were right about something, it was that this guy wasn't going to be able to hack it. It didn't work out when they were in West Virginia. It didn't. It was fine when they were in the Group of Five, but immediately they jump into the Pac-12 or the Big 12. 4-8 in conference, 4-8 overall, 2-7 in conference. It was a struggle for Houston. Coming into this year, we like Willie Fritz with what he did at Tulane. But Donovan Smith's the quarterback. That's concerning. 60th in returning production, actually better than I thought. 89.5% of the offensive yards are back. That's 4th in the country. So there's some things that are here, but I just don't know if that's going to be something that they can work through. 118 offensive line starts is something big, but they have a tough schedule according to Phil Steele. And I'm looking at this thing. I don't know if this is going to be able to get off the tracks pretty quick. Willie Fritz at Tulane was able to build something, right? It was a long burn. There seems like there's going to be some patience here. If Willie Fritz is able to do what he did at Tulane with Houston, then they could build a successful program. But I think in year one, there is going to be some struggles here, Tyson. That's my concern about Houston as we just kind of look through everything with Fritz in year one here. There's some pieces, but I just don't trust the quarterback.
I disregard everything Brad just said while I was gone. Strike it from the record. Hopefully the Wi-Fi is a little better now, but time will tell. Yeah, it's my boy Willie Fritz, and coming from Tulane, like we're all very excited. This thing, they might have the least amount of talent of any Power 4 school in the country. It's gonna be a slow burn here, but I think that Willie Fritz is the guy for the job, man. I think Houston is a good program. Like if he turns this thing around, he's getting up there. So we don't know what the next step would be for him, but we're talking about potentially two of the bigger turnarounds of programs in our lifetime.
I don't think he leaves, right? I think this is his last job.
It's got to be his forever home.
You're in the Big 12. You're in Houston. You're in Texas, like a big area that you can recruit from. If he does what he does at Tulane, like kind of builds the way he did it at Tulane here, I have a hard time thinking that this team won't be competing for Big 12 titles.
The other part, I think, is that the Tulane thing was kind of like a powder keg. Like we were hearing, hey, there's something crazy going on, like in this building right now, and we're just not getting the same stories out of Houston. And so it might be slower in Houston than it was down in Louisiana.
Iowa State, man, oh man, I am hot and cold on this guy, Matt Campbell. And if you guys have been following the show for years, you know that I just love to crush him. I mean, I love taking shots at him because all we heard was, oh, this guy's, the next freaking Andy Reid, the next Belichick. How is he not in the NFL? He's just so good. He's 53-48 in 9 seasons here. And I know it's Iowa State, and there's not a lot of expectations. But my God, anytime there was 1 ounce of, oh, this team could be really good this year, they crumbled like a cheap tent. And anytime that there was, man, Iowa State's supposed to suck, that's when you look at Iowa State and they're like, whoa, they overachieved. It was just a roller coaster. I was sick of it. With that being said, I think this team's going to be really good, man. 3rd in returning production, 9th in offensive yards back, 9th in tackles back, 90 O-line starts, 10 returning offensive starters, 9 on defense. Tyson Rocco Beck thrown into a situation last year because of the gambling scandal. They may have gotten a blessing from that. 3,100 yards, 63% completion percentage, 23 touchdowns, 8 picks as a freshman. Man, this team looks good on paper. I'm curious if I'm drinking too much of the Kool-Aid or what you think.
No, they look awesome. I think that this is try to be nice as I can here, but this is it's like getting ready to play Utah. Iowa State's about the best like matchup that you could get almost. Like they're going to punch you in the face. They're going to control the ball. They're not going to turn it over. So I actually think that they, for the first time in like the Matt Campbell era here at Iowa State, they might get a mirror match, and that could be fun. But dude, the defense is going to be good. Like we know that. Like that's not a concern. It's the offense going to put the ball in the end zone when it matters, because we've seen them drop 60, to win their 6th game of the year and make a bowl, and everyone's like, whoa. And now I don't know. You said that when they're bad, when they're supposed to be bad, they end up good. When they're supposed to be good, they end up bad. Brad, this year they're supposed to be right in the middle.
It's going to go one of 2 ways. It'll be interesting. I am fascinated by this Iowa team. That is for sure. Here's another interesting one. You got the Kansas Jayhawks, and this is a guy in the head coach, Lance Leipold, who we love. I mean, we love them at Buffalo. We're big Maction freaks, right? Like we were following this thing. We're like, man, this guy is good. He's not going to be here for a while. Goes to Kansas. Are you kidding me? Oh, what does he do? He turns it around. I mean, 4 seasons, he's 17-21. You're like 17-21 statue? What's Tyson talking about? Are you kidding me from where this Jayhawks program was before? Holy smokes. Now, here's the concern. I'm a Penn State guy, and you can see in the background here that I got the flag going. Penn State got their offensive coordinator from last year, Andy Kotelnicki, who has been with Lance Leipold and really involved in this offense ever since the Buffalo days and before. Like they're super tight. Now, this is Leipold's offense, so get me wrong. So Kotelnicki's the play caller and was helping with play designs. But Leipold's, he's the offensive guy here. But Jalen Daniels, he had a back injury last year, only made 3 starts. There's no Jason Bean to back him up this season. So if they get into some deep shit, I don't know if they're going to be able to have a paddle that they can wade through the creek with. So it'll be interesting. But 16th in returning production, 27th in offensive yards back. 130 offensive line starts. That's 12th in the country. My concern is their tackling and their defense, 52.8%. It's 88th in the country. If I'm looking at it here, I'll just tell you, I'm going to be betting a lot of overs on Kansas this year.
Yeah, and I think we know the offense is going to be good. The defense has taken like mini steps almost every year for the last 3 years, and they just have to take one more in order to get to where they want to go. Last year, this was like the dark horse Big 12 champion for me and you. Like I ended up going with Texas. I think you ended up going with Texas as well to win this conference, but we were looking hard at Kansas. A lot of it was because of Jalen Daniels, but you walked away from that season going, man, Jason Beaton was one of the better backup quarterbacks in the entire country.
Yeah.
We probably should have learned that when he beat Oklahoma. But this is like, are we doing this again? Like this offense, Jalen Daniels is awesome. Evan Neal is going to be awesome. We know what Arnold and Skinner are going to give you at the wide receiver position. It just kind of feels like there has to be regression somewhere in this Kansas football team. Doesn't like we know Kobe Bryant is a lockdown corner and all this. What they allow like 10 or 11 passing touchdowns a year ago. All these stats sound made up for a Kansas football team, but that's where we are. I mean, they've been knocking on the door here, and it's either going like this is the year where they either kick it down or like go to the back of the line.
Let's go to Kansas State. Go to the Little Apple, Manhattan, Kansas. This was one of the most interesting off seasons because, Ohio State fans are pumped that they got Will Howard. And they're like, whoa, upgrade. Kansas State kicked his ass out, man. They're like, no, we want Avery Johnson. Like, if it's going to be a quarterback battle, you probably aren't winning that. Like, just so keep that in mind here as we get into the Big Ten stuff. But, they love Avery Johnson. He's a stud, man. He's a local kid, local Kansas guy. I mean, he's getting tons of NIL stuff. All intents and purposes, seems like a good dude. I think he can be a good face of this program. Here's my concern. We like Chris Kleiman, 39-24. That's actually really good. I mean, we thought Bill Snyder was doing miracle work here. I mean, maybe it's just Manhattan, Kansas. Everybody who coaches there wins. I don't know. It'll be seen after Kleiman maybe potentially leaves. But, they only have 4 offensive starters back on offense. 89th in the country with 40.2% of their yards back. 87th overall in returning production. Now, what's interesting is on the defensive side, they should be solid. 8th in 8 returning starters, 15th in their tackle percentage back. So if the defense can hold them up and allow this offense to grow into it, I think this could be a really good Kansas State team.
Yeah, they did lose like a couple starters from a secondary that was really, really, really good a year ago. A couple things we know about Kansas State, like the running back room is going to be deep. The tight ends are going to be good. Like losing Ben Sonata that's going to be tough. Like that's a really good college football player that just walked out of the door. They actually have a bunch of targets because Phil Brooks is gone, and that's another guy with a bunch of catches. But I just with this Kansas State football team, I like Kleiman. I have to see him win one of these things, like eventually, you know what I mean, in order for me to really believe. And I know he's won a bunch of big games, but I'm talking about like this is a team that has an outside shot to make a college football playoff. Like playing in the Big 12 championship game isn't going to cut it this year.
Yeah, they have to win it, right? I mean, you get the automatic berth. I just don't know how many teams are going to get in from the Big 12. It feels to me like, I mean, depending on the result, but it feels to me like this is a one-bid conference, maybe 2. I think it's going to be 2 from the ACC. I mean, we kind of went through this earlier, but I agree. I mean, of course, the safest thing to do is to win, right? Like, you and I are fighting fans. What do they say? Never put it in the hands of the judges. Like, don't let the committee screw you by losing the conference title game if you want to get in. So, I mean, another team, Tyson, just doesn't feel like they win those title games very often, and that's Oklahoma State. This team, my God, they could be insane, honestly. They are first in returning production. 17th in offensive yards back, 7th in tackles back, 83.9%, 2nd in the country with 214 offensive line starts, 10 returning offensive starters, 9 on defense. They got the best running back in the country. I mean, Alan Bowman, my God, we thought he sucked for a while. This kid threw it for 3,400 yards. Like, I know 15 touchdowns, 14 picks, and he's in his 8th year of college football. I don't know what it is about this conference, but they have 7 guys who have played 6 or more years of college football. But
yeah, same thing in basketball too.
That's true. If everything goes right, Oklahoma State could run the table. But it feels like when everything is supposed to go right for Oklahoma State, that's when they suck. And that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, this does kind of feel like a Gundy letdown spot. And Gundy's my guy. This is one of my favorite coaches in all of sports. Like me and you were getting in fights on here last year that you said they were going to suck, and they started out 2-2 and all this stuff, and then they just ended up rolling a bunch of games. If they're going to run the table, they're going to run the ball, and that's what the whole season comes down to. Ollie Gordon, like you said, probably like he is the best college running back in the country. He might go first out of all these guys in the draft. That kind of remains to be seen, but we know what he can do. The offensive line's like top 10 isn't crazy like in the country as an expectation. I think they should expect that out of themselves. Tons of guys back all over the place. Just like Oklahoma State's entire identity is finding a way up to the top to beat the bullies. They're not used to this whole thing where it's like, oh, everybody's coming for us. The Bowman turnovers are a concern, though. I think that like if you're going to point to a reason like why Oklahoma State doesn't live up to expectations, it's going to be not taking care of the football.
Can he get away with doing the McCarthy where they just throw the ball 12 times? Like
is
Gundy, he'd like to chuck it. Well, so he apparently was like, no, we need to start running the football because we can't win if we're going to do our air raid like we have in the past. And when that change in philosophy occurred, I mean, Tyson, I was counting my money when I watched him almost lose to some slapdick team. I was like, no way this team goes over. They won freaking 10 games last year. They went 7-2 in conference. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was watching.
No, Ollie Gordon's going to run for 2,700 yards this year.
TCU. And my goodness, does it feel like a long time since they were in the championship? How long ago does that feel, honestly?
Like 2 coaches ago. Almost,
Holy
when you
smokes.
look at this TCU stuff.
It's insane. I mean, 2022, they're in the championship game. 2023, they go 5-7, 3-6 in conference. Just completely off the national map again. Sonny Dykes, this is his 11th season as a head coach, 3rd at TCU. Oh, man. I'll just put it this way. Max Duggan's not walking through that door. And you got Josh Hoover, 6 starts last year, 2,200 yards. I think, all right, maybe that's actually pretty good. But 15 touchdowns, 9 picks. I mean, that's actually really good. I'm concerned, though, is it what this offense is honestly going to look like here under Dykes. Like, I mean, we know it's going to be high-powered and we know they're going to score points at certain times. But are they going to be able to do it when it matters? They're going to be able to get stops. 32nd in returning production, that's a good sign. 77 offensive line starts, okay, good. But 56.2% of the offensive yards back, 59.2% of tackles back. This is one of those teams where I just kind of go either way on. Like, I can see them being explosive and being one of those teams that blows out teams in this conference. But I can also see a reality where, okay, the quarterback is turning the ball over. The defense does very little to stop anybody. And all of a sudden you're in passing downs the entire time and you just have too many mistakes. I mean, what's your read on TCU when you look at it?
Doesn't it kind of feel like year one, Sonny Dykes? Like it's almost the same conversation. Like, not that they're going to win, 13 games and play in the national championship, but like the conversation that offseason was like, is he running 2 quarterback sets out here in the Big 12? Like, what are we going to do with this guy? And it ended up working out and being really fun. They had legit NFL players on that team and on that offense. And I just don't know if those guys are present this year. Andy Avalos coming over from Boise State is like, that's the most unenviable job in the country. Like, how many times watching TCU last year was it like, 15-yard play, 17-yard play, 25-yard play? It was just explosives all over the place on that defense. I don't know how much that's going to change. Like, they didn't stop the pass and they go to the transfer portal and like get some like new faces in there, but it's just kind of tough when you get out athleted by a lot of these guys, and they were able to mask some of those defensive inefficiencies during that magical run that they went on. But the other part is like, dude, they averaged a full touchdown less a year ago, like in points. And for an offensive guy, and we love Sonny Dykes, that's a huge drop off.
And that's my concern about the quarterback situation, right? Because Duggan was just doing it all for him. And then last year, they just couldn't really find a quarterback. If Hoover can take the next step, all right, we can see something with TCU potentially. But if not, I think it's going to be another tough year. Texas Tech, I was super high on Texas Tech last year, and they let me down. Joey McGuire, so they went 7-6 last year, 5-4 in conference. It just felt like nothing went right for them. It just like, I don't know. The defense was supposed to be good. They were giving up points when the offense wasn't scoring. or when the offense was scoring. And when the offense wasn't scoring, the defense was holding things down. Like it was a disaster of a year compared to the talent that they had in there. 9 offensive returning starters, 5 defensive returning starters. 57th in returning production, 66.9% of their yards are back, 54.8% of their tackles are back. But Tyson, 125 offensive line starts. That is huge. You got to win the trenches if you want to dominate the way McGuire wants to do. That's a good start. I don't know. I don't know if I'm a little jaded from what happened last year, but I mean, your quarterbacks, Baylor and Morton, didn't even throw for 2,000 yards last year. Come on, man. I don't know. I'm not getting a good vibe here for the Red Raiders.
It is death, taxes, and Taj Brooks being the most slept on player in the entire country. Like, you just got through that whole thing without even shouting out my boy, 1,500 yards on the ground. Like, that's the only thing when you look at this team and you go, okay, I know what I'm going to get from him. And he's an All-American. He's a really, really good player. The quarterback's going to be an issue. Pass catchers are going to be an issue. They're all brand new, right? This is a defense that's like had its issues and taken small steps forward, but again, they're replacing 7 starters on that side of the ball that they lose from last season. It's tough, and it kind of feels to me like 7-6 is fine in Lubbock right now. Like, that's what they went last year, and the expectations were like weirdly high. There was a lot of buzz around the Texas Tech Red Raiders this time last year. Maybe they're the 2024 Oklahoma State. Like, maybe they're just going to play FU football, right, and just control it and punch you in the face. And I would love that. But I think Texas Tech is another one of these 7-win teams from the Big 12.
I can definitely see them attacking on the ground with the offensive line. Taj Brooks, like you mentioned, it's got to, that may be the recipe. And I think the other thing too that could benefit them, maybe in the short term, definitely in the long term, the fact that Texas and Oklahoma aren't here anymore.
Gone.
I mean, it's huge for Texas Tech. So a couple more teams here before we get into our Money Making Time. UCF. And if you listen to our early kind of breakdown or thought process, how we're looking at college football, this is a team I'm high on. Gus Malzahn, 4th season, 24-16. This is their second year in the Big 12. I think that's huge, right? They went 6-7 last year, 3-6 in conference. So that, first year, anytime somebody makes a jump into the Power 4 or 5, it has not gone well in the past. This is their second year. 7 offensive starters back, 8 defensive starters. I'm going to read these numbers off, and it's not going to sound too impressive, right? 75th in returning production, 55.6% are yards back, 48.6% are tackles back, 58 offensive line starts, which I despise. But you got KJ Jefferson coming in from Arkansas. And Gus Malzahn has said this is the closest thing he's had since Cam Newton. I mean, come on, you hear that and you go bling, like your ears perk up. I mean, you're getting excited. Yeah. 53rd toughest schedule here. They have distinct travel advantage, I think, because you have teams having to fly into their home stadium, which is an insanely hard place to play. When they go on the road, sure, there's some good environments, but I don't know. I'm buying into UCF. I'm excited. I'm going to go into it more during Money Making Time, but I think this is going to be a big year for the Knights.
Yeah, and let's see if Gus Malzahn still got the fastball. I think that's what this is going to, come down to, and not just in play calling and utilizing KJ Jefferson, but with these transfers, right? Like, we're excited a little bit about the transfers that UCF brings in. Defense allowed a lot of points. Gus Malzahn has been really good at recruiting defensive talent. I think they brought in Ted Roof to call defensive plays, which good hire, veteran guy, been around the block, all of those things. They really just need somebody to stabilize, because if this is a team that is even allowing only 25, 26 points a game, UCF has a really good shot at kind of being the dark horse in this conference. RJ Harvey, dude, I just keep going through all these teams, and I'm like, man, I forgot about this running back and this running back and this one. The Big 12 has some good ones. He's in that mix as well. They return a bunch of skill position guys. Offensive line is essentially brand new. You mentioned 7 returning starters. I think 3 are new on the offensive line. So we'll see how that goes as you get accustomed to a new quarterback. But if they're playing, 2010 Auburn style football, they're going to be just fine.
Utah, super interesting team on the surface, right? Because Cam Rising's back for his 10th year of college football. He tore his ACL in the Rose Bowl against Penn State.
He actually sold
Missed
me an
all
insurance
of last year.
policy the other day.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah.
I'm glad he's double dipping. But so Kyle Whittingham's in his 20th season here, and we know he's been absolutely insane. 162 and 79 at Utah. I mean, come on, the guy's incredible. Already has his what do you call it? Like the guy who's going to take over the successor. Thank you. And Morgan Scalley. So if you're watching on Fox, which you probably will a lot this year, you're going to hear Brock Heward love this guy. Scalley, Tyson, it sounds like is much closer to taking over this program than a lot of people thought. Like Kyle Whittingham kind of made it seem like this was going to be the last dance. I don't know if that's the case. If it is, they picked a good year he picked a good year to kind of go out on, because it looks like Utah, they are the favorite, but it looks like they're going to be set up for a lot of success. I mean, 68.2% of their tackles back, 9 defensive starters. We know the defense is going to be good. Only 26.8% of their offensive yards are back from last year. A lot of that is because of injury. So take that with a grain of salt. But it's hard to bet against Whittingham. It's hard to go against them, especially we just know how tough of a place that place to play is. I know you love Utah. I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, they're not losing the game at home in conference. I think that's something I can stand on right now and feel really good about. I don't even care if Cam Rising's the starting quarterback at that point. And they get Kuth back at tight end. He was hurt last year as well. This is a different style of football than everybody else in the Big 12 plays. Like, this defensive line is going to wreak a little bit different kind of havoc than your UCF defensive line or your TCU defensive line. The secondary got bolstered by a bunch of transfers. I think they got a dude from Michigan, a dude from Stanford, and then maybe an FCS school thrown in there, something like that. But not worried about the defense. And Brad, I have less concerns about the offense than you do, just because I have been saying for what feels like forever now that Cam Rising is going to hold a clipboard in the NFL for a long time. And I think that's all Utah needs him to be. Like this dude, he doesn't have to be Caleb Williams. He can be AJ McCarron. He can just do different things. He gets slept on a little bit. Like, every time you watch a game, how many times are we going to hear Brock Heward call Cam Rising a sneaky athlete over and over and over again this season? I think that this is Kyle Whittingham's last season, and I think he's going out with a bang, brother.
All right, last team before Money Making Time, West Virginia. Neil Brown, 6th year. Holy smokes, his time flying. I mean, we remember him at Troy. Hasn't had the tenure that we expected. I mean, 31 and 29, 9 and 4 last year, though. Like, is this the time it turns around? He was like, I'm taking over play calling. My ass is on the line. Give me the playbook. I'm calling him. Garrett Green's back, senior year, 2,400 yards last year. 53% completion percentage. Like, you want him to improve on that. But 6 touchdowns, took care of the ball with 4 picks, 8 returning starters on offense. The concern is on defense. 48.8% of their tackles are back, 96 in the country, only 5 starters. It's going to have to be carried by their offense, man. I mean, 5th in the country with 88.7% of their yards back, 113 offensive line starts. They want to run the football. I think they're going to be set up for it. It's just, can the defense hold down the opposing team?
Yeah, run the ball and hit Traylon Ray, for deep shots. That's like the recipe that West Virginia used for a good portion of the season a year ago. I don't see this team vying for a spot in the conference title game. Like, I'm seeing that some places, and I'm just not on board all the way with that. To me, it feels like a good West Virginia team. Do with that what you will.
All right, let's get into Money Making Time. If I can find the thing here. All right, so this is your first time. What we're going to do, we're going to give one conference champion. We're going to go through our win total bets. And at the end, Tyson will tell you where, if we add anything, where you can find that information. But let me start off here. I'm going to take a shot here. I'm going to go UCF plus 800. I've been talking about them freaking all offseason. I've been thinking about it all offseason. I think the ceiling on this is when you look at what that can be accomplished on offense with KJ Jefferson taking over. That's enough for me to take a bite of this thing. Like, Utah, they're the rightful favorite, I believe. But if I'm looking past that, I'm not necessarily believing in Avery Johnson immediately. Kansas, we'll get into that a little bit, but Oklahoma State, like we talked about too, It feels like they're in for some regression, or at least feels like they're in for a letdown. When I look at UCF here, New Hampshire, Sam Houston start at TCU. I think that could be 3-0. Home Colorado. Colorado's at trenches. They might get smoked. If they beat Florida at Florida, which it looks like they might, Tyson, they could be sleepwalking their way into the conference championship game. And so that at least gives me a shot to maybe hedge out of that.
Yeah, and I think that might be the way that I would approach UCF bet. I'm going Utah here at plus 320. I just think they're better than everybody else. I think that they're, again, I've said it for 4 years, like they played a different way than everybody else in the Pac-12, and they're kind of walking into the same style here, and they're going to play a different way. If you do like UCF, but you don't have enough confidence as Brad, it might be worth looking after that Florida game. Like if this team is rolling, that number still might be at 400, right? So if you're liking what he's saying, but you're not totally sure yet, there will be some time to get it on UCF as conference champs. If Cam Rising comes out and looks good, like right away, you go, oh, that's the guy who's going to throw for 3,400 yards and 25 touchdowns. The Utah number is going to get way smaller.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, so I'll start off here. UCF, if you couldn't tell, I'm going to go over 7.5 wins, minus 134 here on FanDuel. I'm sorry, really? So we need 4 losses at Florida, maybe. And Florida's off a bye. Okay. Let's say Colorado's a miracle worker. They come in. At Iowa State, okay, that's 3. We're closing out home BYU, home Arizona, at Arizona State, bye at West Virginia, home Utah. There's a possibility for 4 losses on there, sure. I'm confident they're going to beat Colorado at home. I think they have a real shot of beating Florida. And even if they lose against Florida, lose at Iowa State, and lose at home against Utah on Friday, that's 3 losses. We cash this bet. So I'm going to go over 7.5.
Just a little bit of an emotional hedge there. You won't get the same juice, but if they win 8, you can say, I told you, I knew they were going to be good. They just didn't end up winning the conference championship. I like that quite a bit. I'm going with Iowa State over 7.5 here at minus 115 to start mine off. This is, I think, it's a year that I'm in agreement with you as far as they're going to be a little better than we expect. I don't think that they're going to like jump to the top of the conference. But if you look through this conference, there's a lot of teams that are in the same, range as far as win totals go. And you have to take your shots on who you think is going to clear that number. I was a little overweight on my unders in this conference, Brad. I had to reevaluate. Give me Iowa State over 7.5.
Well, we're going to have a lot of stuff here that's similar because Tyson, I'm with you here. I'm jumping. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I am. I'm jumping on the Matt Campbell train over 7.5. Again, minus 115. Just the fact that they have so many starters returning. They play the 29th toughest schedule. That hurts me a little bit, but I'm confident in what we can get here. Now, I wish everybody was saying they would suck, so that for sure this would fly over. But I'm glad that at least nobody's like, oh, Iowa State should be in the championship game, yada, yada. I think they're still a little under the radar, which is good. So Matt Campbell, let's go, baby. Over 7.5.
My next one here, I'm going BYU under 4.5. And Brad, instead of giving any sort of like insight into this one, can you just read the people BYU schedule?
Yeah, let me pull this up here. It's tough.
It's tough.
It is tough.
BYU. So
you start home Southern Miss. You go at SMU. Now, if you're like SMU, what? I mean, go listen to our ACC. We're high on them. At Wyoming. Now you got a head coaching change, but Tyson, how hard is it to play in Laramie? I mean, my goodness.
Powder River.
Then you go to Kansas. Then you host Kansas State. You got to go at Baylor. That's 5 games in a row. You get a bye week. Then you host Arizona. Host Oklahoma State off a bye, go to UCF, then you get a bye. Thank you. But then you play at Utah off a bye. Then you finish with Kansas, at Arizona State, and home Houston. I mean, it's just kind of softer back end, but it's tough.
I don't know if there's 5 there.
I don't either. And that's why I'm joining you here under 4.5. I mean, 23rd toughest schedule, Tyson. I don't believe in Gary Bohannon. I do like Kalani Sitake. I just don't know if BYU has the players to compete in the Big 12. That's my concern. And when you bring in more schools like Arizona State, like Arizona, like Colorado, you bring in more guys who've been competing at a high Power 5 level, and you're just 2 years removed from being independent, this being your second, it's tough.
My next one here, I'm going over 7.5 wins for the Arizona Wildcats, minus 122. This is new for me. Arizona has not been my favorite football program, and maybe I'm a sucker. But give me the San Jose State offense with these dudes. I'm fine. Like, this is where we're rolling. I think that Arizona is going to be really fun this year. And as we were discussing pre-show, it's just kind of one of those things where I would rather cheer for them all year long than catch myself having to cheer against them.
Well, I'm right there with you on Arizona over 7.5. The Tyson, sometimes we're simpatico, other times we go mano y mano. Like, this is, we're either going to be rolling in the Big 12 or we're going to be crying because we're pretty much aligned on a lot of stuff here. So 7.5, it's interesting. Normally, when you get a coaching change, especially in this era, you have a max exodus, and we talked about it before. But that's gonna give you a baseline, right? With T-Mac, with Fafita, with
That's
Tacario
5 wins
Davis,
by
the
itself
defender,
is where I'm looking at this from.
especially when you throw in New Mexico, Northern Arizona. That's your start, right? Then you go at Kansas State, tough, bye at Utah. Okay, those are hard games. I mean, you might be 2-2, and then we're kind of sweating a little bit. But you host Texas Tech, who we just said we're not too high on, at BYU. You host Colorado for a homecoming game, which is going to be – that game's going to be – you just bet the over right now. Then you host West Virginia. So you get 2 games in a row at home. You got to go UCF. Then you host Houston. They're off a bye. At TCU off a bye. Then you host Arizona State. Like, this is a little bit tougher, I think, than we expect. But that's why, Tyson, we need Fafita and the star McMillan to come through. And so if you got star power, I think we both agree that we think they can perform.
Yeah, we're suckers, dude. This is who Fanta's looking for. My next one here, I'm going under on Cincinnati at 5.5. We talked about it a little bit. This is a team that I don't think is going to be very good this season. I was at 5.5 number. I think if Cincinnati's in the ACC, we're getting that at 4.5 or 3.5 on the book, right? But anything can happen in the Big 12. It's weird. Nobody knows. I just don't think they're going to be able to score the ball, and it's gonna really hurt against a bunch of teams who average 40.
That's one of the few ones I'm not simpatico on you with, and I'll throw out another one. Oklahoma State over 8.5 at plus 122 here on FanDuel. Come on, man. We just went through everything. The number one returning production in the entire freaking country. They won 10 games last year. I think they're better. You know, you open with South Dakota State. Let's be honest. They could lose that game. I mean, defending national champions at the FCS level, that would be just so classic. But then you host Arkansas, who, Tyson, we have a lame duck situation there. Then you go at Tulsa, should be a win. Host Utah, that's going to be tough. At Kansas State, that's tough. Then let's close here. West Virginia, bye. At Baylor, at BYU. I'm sorry, at BYU, at Baylor. Home Arizona State, at TCU. Then you get a bye. Then you face Texas Tech. Then you close at Colorado. Phil Steele has this the 54th toughest schedule in the country. I think if that plays out that way, I mean, there's some big names on here, but, plays out the way, I think you can definitely win 9 games. I mean, 3 losses here, maybe Kansas State on the road, Utah at home, that would be tough. And I don't know, is there another one?
We'll see. I mean, it's tough for me to not be walking with you on the Oklahoma State train. This is maybe the first time I can remember that I'm not playing they're over here, Brad. But one under that I'm maybe a little contrarian on here. I'm going under Colorado 5.5. I do not think this team makes a bowl game. Brad, it kind of feels like the entire season might hinge on a North Dakota State team coming into your building week 1, which is crazy. But you look at this and you go, they play North Dakota State actually like 2 weeks from now, and then it's Nebraska. And let's see what Nebraska looks like. Like, maybe Nebraska sucks. Then it's Colorado State. That's one that we think. Baylor. Then you go UCF, Kansas State, Arizona, Cincinnati. You sneak one in there. Then it's Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Like, they are severely outmatched for the last 6 or 7 games of that schedule, save 1 or 2 of those. They have to start hot, and it's really hard to expect a group of guys that just have never played together to walk into a season and dominate. We got tricked a little bit last year because TCU had played in the national championship game a year before that, and I think had a number next to their name, just like out of respect at that point in the year. But it was not a very good Colorado football team. And I don't think there was a ton of improvement, man.
I got 2 more. Kansas under 8.5 minus 170. This number to me, I mean, we talk about 70 cents. That's about a win, right? So 8 wins here. That's what they're projecting. They went 9-4 last year, as we discussed. And Tyson, I'm looking here. Lindenwood at Illinois, UNLV. That's going to be a tough game. At West Virginia, then you turn back around, play TCU. Then you got to go at Arizona State. Like 5 games in a row that you don't get a bye. And then you get your bye. Then you got to go Houston at Kansas State, who's off a bye. Then you get another bye. You got to go face Iowa State, close with at BYU, Colorado, and at Baylor. This is tough. And they're not playing in their home stadium. So there's been a bunch of excitement and, kind of new attitude surrounding Kansas. And all of a sudden, they're trying to upgrade that thing quick. And now you kind of screw this team a little bit. So I think it's going to be tough for them to win 9 games like they did last year.
Yeah, and that's my next one too, is Kansas under 8.5. I really don't want to do it. I want to cheer for the 10-win Kansas Jayhawks football team. I think that'd be awesome. That schedule is a little light, if we're being totally honest. There are just a lot of existential things that go into this Kansas football team. Jalen Daniels, like, we haven't seen this dude play a full season. Like, I want him to win the Heisman Trophy. In order to win the Heisman Trophy, you got to play every game. You got to play every snap, and that's just not something he does. And again, maybe this is the year that they, like, if Kansas football makes a playoff, dude.
Oh,
that's crazy. And, like, not that we're threatening at 9 wins, but if they get 10, like, they're there, and that's just not where I think this program is. I think that there's a definite chance to get caught in the middle here, where Kansas wins 9 games and doesn't look as good as they did a year ago, but I'm not totally afraid of that right now.
And then to close it out for me, and I believe you're on the same thing, I got to get a piece of Utah. Over 9.5 minus 158. Listen, Tyson laid it out there. I'm looking to attack a different thing here for the championship game. Long game on that. I think for here, Utah is going to be a really good football team, coached by Kyle Whittingham. If he's kind of thinking this is his last dance, I don't know if he's telling the players. I don't know what's going on that front. But if they get a sense of that, it's kind of like an emotional angle, not necessarily that it translates to wins, but they're going to be locked in. They're going to be bought in, right? Like they're going to be ready to play. And they went 8-5 last year with like a bad quarterback situation. They play Southern Utah, host Baylor, at Utah State, who's going to be horrible, at Oklahoma State. All right, that's tough, but you go 3-1 there. Host Arizona, should be interesting with Arizona off a bye. But then you get your bye week. You go at Arizona State, host TCU, at Houston. Then you get your bye week, another bye week. Host BYU, at Colorado, host Iowa State, at UCF. If we think Utah is the premier of this class, those are games that they have to win at home against Iowa State. You have to beat Colorado on the road. You have to be able to beat UCF. You have to beat Oklahoma State. Like, that's just the reality. If you're going to be the favorite here, you got to win those games.
Dude, they're dog walking the Big 12. Like, they're walking through this. I'm more interested in the Utah going undefeated in the regular season bet than I am in the 9.5. Like, I just think that there's a significant delta between them and the rest of this conference. And I like Oklahoma State. I like Kansas State. I think that UCF is going to be fun. It's a different thing. Utah plays different football. Utah is crushing the Big 12.
I think we have the same amount of plays here, Tyson. I miss any of yours because I know I'm done.
No, I'm done too. I think we actually got one right.
Well, it's nice to have a lot of synergy here. That's for sure. We'll viewing the conference the same. Yeah, true.
We'll find out if it was nice. But in the meantime, like, after the season starts, when Brad and I are trying to scramble and make all of our money back, and we're going to have to play some of these teams that we hate, you can catch our bets in the Discord app. Our group name is I Said What I Said. We'll let you right in. It's free. We got MOB bets. Brad's been spraying the board with home run parlays, with total base parlays, anything you can imagine. He's got money lines in there. Obviously, we're coming up on both college football and the NFL. Those are just going to be really fun seasons, and there's a lot of crazy opportunity this year in college football. I think that nobody knows who's going to be good in a different way than normal, because nobody knows where anybody's playing anymore. So come bet that with us and send us your parlays. Let us know what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Jump in there. And in the meantime, like Tyson said, we got a ton of content. Like, subscribe, and share the show. If you're subscribed on YouTube, you're not going to miss a thing. If you're subscribed, if you only listen in podcast form, you'll get this new episode right in your feed as we're having tons of episodes coming out every single week. Also, share the show. If send it to a friend, send it to somebody you hate. We don't care. We accept everybody to listen to the content, and smash the like button if you're listening as well. If you're listening in podcast form, 5-star review, whatever you can do, maybe a comment, whatever the case may be. We just appreciate the support that you guys can give us. I'll be seeing Tyson in person actually this weekend for the first time in a while, but we'll have NFL content coming out that'll be later this week that we'll try to sneak in before we go. I visit my hometown and go and see Tyson. So we hope you guys have a good time. We'll talk to you on the NFL previews. Until then, peace.